Okay, hello everyone. We are doing a Wolfram Language and Wolfram Alpha design review here on the subject of words and languages. So first up, long-awaited phonetics.
Yeah, we have a stack of things that have been in dev and kind of behind other projects for a while, so we want to get
I
the
believe this one is at
logjam
10 years
cleared
and
out.
counting. Phonetic stuff
Well,
is 10 years
no
and counting.
no practical work except within the past year. So
Mhm.
discussion, yes, but actual concrete effort, no.
Okay.
I mean, up front, I just wanted to mention we had talked a bit with Shadi and the audio group. I know there had been some discussion at some point about whether there were going to be they'd be working with some models where input or output of phonetic symbols was going to be useful. There still isn't something like that that's on their to-do list anytime
Well,
soon. So I
I
think there's
mean,
not a
10 years ago when we started this project, the way one did voice to text
right.
was going through all of this.
Yeah,
That's no longer true.
right.
Um, Okay. I don't quite understand why this looks so un-entity-like. Isn't it an
What
entity?
do you mean?
Well, maybe it's
I
been
mean,
so
that's
long since I did one of these design reviews.
you're not looking at Wolfram Alpha input interpretations, that they don't get any other special styling generally.
Uh, I guess that's right. But sometimes it's a paren something or other. Paren phonetic.
Generally, only in cases where it's sort of
Right. Okay.
ambiguous. I mean, maybe this is a niche enough area that we
Well,
should
by the time
we
you
should
type
add
this
that.
in, you know what you're getting.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Okay, but if you typed in the Unicode for this thing, what would you get?
Ideally, we would get the thing. We still have spellings work that's in progress, but we should be able to support any of those things.
Okay. This here. By the way, what's the ASCIification of this? Oh, it's there.
It's down there. Yeah.
For goodness sake, let's put that before the Braille. Braille is not as
The ordering is
common
not
as
quite right. Yes.
ASCII, whatever that is, and then Braille.
Right. But you were going to
I
say
don't
about the
understand why it
phonetic
says code
features.
representations. I mean, just say representations and then put Unicode. I would go ASCII IPA, Xsamba, Unicode, Braille.
Okay.
Okay, here, when you say place of articulation, you've got to have some kind of picture there. That makes sense. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just not clear, you know, what is this anyway? What does it sound like? And how do I get the sound that it makes?
We don't have sounds for these things right now.
I could surely get them, certainly generate them.
True.
And I think we should, because I think that's an obvious uh yeah, that's an obvious thing.
Did we
Um
have Christian? I know in all the stuff that we had scraped on this, I thought I remembered seeing some semi-standard kind of profile silhouettes, diagrams of
they
some of these
certainly
things,
exist.
place of
Yeah,
articulation. Yeah.
yes. In their respective web pages in Wikipedia, they have images. Then we could use those.
Well, some version of those. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So then okay, in terms of the sounds, we should generate them. Now, I think many of these voice, you know, text to speech engines support IPA. So that's how we should generate it.
Okay.
I think it would be lovely to have the spectrogram as well, which we might be able to generate the same way.
True.
Okay, I think it would be very useful. I think another thing that'll be interesting, which we could also compute from this, is the rough length of these things. See what I'm saying?
What do you
Like
mean?
less is, well, if you go S takes, I don't know what, some number of milliseconds. Whereas some other things take a different number of milliseconds. That will be a useful thing to have, I think.
Okay.
Nice thing to have. Well, that's a lose. What's going on there? Oh, diacritic. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, in that case, it's the circle. It's just a placeholder because
I know, but not that one. That one's just a circle. So I don't understand how can that diacritic if there's a little dot down at the bottom, but what about this one here?
Yeah, fair enough.
Okay.
Yeah, that has to be fixed.
Okay.
The one
Well,
thing I wondered,
here,
and maybe this is a question for Christian, like for different types for different classes of things like consonants versus vowels versus diacritics, just some of these properties don't apply, which is why we end up with these grids that are just
Yes, correct.
completely disjoint. I mean, would it make more sense to segment the phonetic features table differently to indicate like these are things that only apply to these types of sounds?
yeah, why don't we have consonant features, vowel features, something else? That doesn't work. Look, what we really need to do probably is put here, you know, paren in gray, not articulated. Not articulated. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Or not voiced, or whatever the right term is. I think that's the right way to do it.
Yeah, okay.
Sandra on our live stream comments very sensibly, you should have example words, like it sounds like blah, blah, blah in blah, blah, blah word in English or whatever other language it is. And we obviously can get that
Yeah.
because we have IPA data. So what we should do is go to the word frequency, pick the highest frequency words.
Highest frequency word that has the
right.
particular
That has that
thing.
thing in it. Now, I mean, we have to be a little bit careful because the IPA obviously depends on tomato versus tomato. You know what I'm saying? And so I don't quite know how that's dealt with, but we probably can just curate these things. But it's an excellent suggestion.
Well, it's a finite set of symbols that we have to do that
really
for, so it's not
right.
a difficult curation task.
Yep. Good suggestion. Thank you.
Yeah.
And
then combine those tables. Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
But just headings at the top, Unicode, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
Okay.
And some questions here more about when we're exposing this in the language, because if we want to be, we could have named entity classes that
Definitely.
are sort of straightforward, like consonants, vowels, diacritics. But then if we're talking about being able to look up, what are all the things with an ejective airstream mechanism, generally we want that to be an implicit entity class because you're looking up by some property value. But then we need to have some support entities that represent those things. So one question here is sort of how granular we get into the entity types.
I think we should call it phonetic feature as you're suggesting there.
Okay. I mean, that group them all and then have the names be indicative of the kind of the subclasses.
Yeah, but I wouldn't go feature. I see. Yeah, that's what I would do, I think. Because we can then have an entity class among phonetic features about places of articulation.
Correct. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, we need this famous chart. I would think, well, so I don't know how much, like, for example, of entity types
Mhm.
in the knowledge base, how many of them do we know their IPA? We certainly could know their IPA for tons of them.
We could, and we've talked about that in the past. We haven't initiated a project to try to harvest those, but we certainly have. I mean, for things that we have alignment to some external source like Wikipedia, we've got sources that we can get some hopefully fairly reliable IPA representation of the name from. It's the kind of thing that's particularly useful for like people. Um, but then even things, I think that the good case once was Notre Dame University versus Notre Dame Cathedral,
Right.
but things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it will be useful. I mean, I don't know to what extent, if we have voice output from LLM type things, being able to sort of anchor it in knowing what the IPA for the entities we're talking about is,
Right.
seems useful to me.
Yeah.
Um, I'm really kind of disappointed by this. I mean, are there really no neural nets out there that will take a spectrogram and turn it into, phonemes that can be represented by IPA? I
I
don't believe
I'll,
that.
I'll ask that. There may very well be. It was just more a question of whether there was something in the works with them right now that would
No,
be able to
because,
make use of this. So
in the
yeah,
10 years since we were trying to do this project,
yeah,
more than 10, I think, it might even be nearly 15. Uh, Always good when there's a project that gets done by people. We're not quite there for this project done by people who were born after the project was initiated. um okay, the but let's look for a neural net that does that,
okay,
put in the neural net repository, and then potentially, for speech recognizer, maybe it's just for now it's just a function repository item, but it probably would be a system function at some point to get the IPA representation of things. Like, for
okay,
example, a good test case would be, when we made that effort to get people at our company with all the various pronunciations of names to record their name,
right.
we could take that and we could put out the IPA
Mhm.
in the company directory. What fun.
Yeah,
Okay. All right. Should we move on?
yeah, I think so. So other things to add here that are probably pretty straightforward and get them exposed in the
Well, at
language.
this
So
point, they can
yeah.
actually be trees. And in the language, we should return actual trees.
I believe they are, right, Christian?
Yeah, in the
Yeah.
scanner, they are graphs because the scanner is still in 12, but if you call the property in 13, in 13.1, I believe, you would get a tree object.
Okay, good. Okay, what am I seeing here? What am I supposed to look at here?
The overall design of the pod. But previously they had been horizontal. There were some spacing issues. We wanted to talk about some changes to how things are represented when we have a large number of things at any particular level and kind of eliding or having and XXX more
It's got
items
an
when we have a lot of
interesting
things.
thing, this thing here.
Mhm.
I didn't know this thing called oil. It's really complicated. Central oil as opposed to standard oil. I never heard of that. Okay. That's interesting. Okay. That looks
That
quite nice.
Engano is the one at the top there is when we have a large number of siblings for one of the, for the specified language.
Oh, which is what we're doing just like trees do.
Yeah.
I don't understand why this says language family and that pink says language, because isn't Javanesec a language as well?
Don't think so.
Our fine system team seems very confused about current Wolfram Alpha. They're very confused. They think current just seems to be a project that hasn't been done, but you were just using it 15 minutes ago, so I think it has to have been done.
Yes.
So can somebody please respond to Brandon and unconfuse that?
Yeah.
One thing about the Javanesic thing, one thing that could be the result of the fact that it appears like a language. Sorry, that appears as a language family, but it's really a language. It's because in some different sources, for example, ISO and Glotto code can have different classifications for it. So when we do the graph for the trees, we usually prioritize the family categorization.
So wait a minute. So you're saying that there are no other leaves in this tree except Engano. Engano is the only leaf in this tree.
No, that's why the three dots are at the bottom, because what defines a family is that it has children. So Engano is the only tree the only leaf at this level that we can see, because there's also like 22 more, right? So there could be more leaves there.
But the way we have the dots, it almost makes it seem like only Greater Central Philippine has children. Is that what you're saying, Stephen? That it's not.
No,
It's not.
I'm just trying to clarify. In the legend at the bottom, it says yellow is language family.
Yeah.
Is that correct? What if there were two leaf languages at the bottom level there? Would they both be in pink? I don't think so. We don't want to show it in pink. We just want to show, I would not even bother to have that legend.
No,
Because you can,
I mean, it will only show it in pink if if we have the tag of language.
no, I know, but I don't think that's the right thing. Okay, so here's what I think. I think that
Okay.
whatever, and why does it say language classification there? What is it? Is it a language or is it something else? Oh, I see. That's the classification of that. I got it.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so here's what we should do. Whatever was the thing asked for, it should be in pink. Okay? Everything else should be in yellow. But if these things are language families rather than individual languages, they should have a little stalk at the bottom here, indicating that they continue. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, totally.
I think
So
that will
you
solve the
don't.
whole
You
problem.
don't. But I mean, sorry, but when we can still have cases where, depending on what tree we're looking at, there could be. Sorry, if I'm wrong about this, Christian, tell me. We could have cases where, at the like say at the same level of Engano, there could be other
Languages.
languages,
Yes, they
but
can be.
also language families. But you're saying
That's
you want to just
correct.
color everything the same and
Yellow.
not.
No, and I'm saying the way you distinguish a language from a language family is the language family has a stalk coming out of it down here.
Okay.
Because the language family we know has children.
Okay.
Or simply has a dot, dot, dot underneath it. That would be fine too. And a language doesn't have the dot, dot, dot. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If it's the leaf of the tree, there's no dot, dot, dot. If it
Got
isn't,
it.
then there is a dot, dot,
You're
dot.
not, you don't want any highlighting showing the difference between languages and language
I don't think so. I
families. You
think it's
just,
confusing.
the end, the end, if it's at the end, you know it's a language, otherwise it's a family, and
Yeah.
just
Right.
clarify that.
And the
Okay.
reason I'm suggesting dot, dot, dots rather than a stalk is because there may be many
Yeah,
children there.
right.
Brandon here seems to be very confused about this URL domain thing. I mean, whatever you were doing 15 minutes ago, Alan, is what he should be doing. So can somebody please tell him that?
Sure. Sorry, Brandon, which
On
flat?
Well, it's in both. Go to Zoom chat or wherever.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Gotcha. Okay.
That looks nice. Looks a lot better than it did before. Okay. Yeah, I really just think we should just lose the legend. And really, these are disconnected. How can anything be disconnected? Don't they all have a root? That is, I see these are rooted with Indo-European. I kind of think it would be nice to show the two together, showing that they have different roots. Maybe that's crazy. That's crazy. I mean, in other words, if I take well, I mean, things could be very distinct from in Indo-European. I don't know, Hindi or something. I don't know where that is. I wish I could actually do it. You know, Hindi versus Spanish. My guess is it branches very high up on the tree. Am I making sense?
Sure. I mean, in the
Just try running it.
classification,
Yeah.
huh? In
Just
the
try
class,
running it. I think it's going to look weird because we've got so much of that backbone will be doubled. You see what I'm saying? If it branches high up on the tree.
yeah, the thing is that we have root families. We have, I believe, 25 root families, and those do not connect to each other.
I know, but listen to what I'm saying. I'm saying consider these two languages branch only low on the tree. They are very similar languages. See what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying?
Yes.
Imagine a language which branches right there. Okay, it went on one of these branches
Mm,
here. Okay,
Okay.
I don't know what that's going to look like. Right? I think it may look kind of crazy. And if you imagine three languages on different branches here, it's just going to look very complicated. I think you should check what it looks like. That's all I'm saying.
Sure. Sure. Fair enough.
Are you
Makes
thinking you
sense.
want to then just kind of elide or not label more of the nodes in between, or?
Well, I think so because I think a lot of those nodes, and this is something we could find by doing tree walking. I
Yeah,
mean, a lot of those nodes may essentially be irrelevant nodes. They may be nodes which are where it always goes the same way. You see what I'm saying? They may be nodes
right.
without degree one, which are barely useful.
Hmm,
Right? Like I'm surprised the Italo-Western romance as opposed to Western romance, Italo-Western romance, you know, shifted Western romance,
right.
you know, Northwest. I mean, it's a bit silly, really, because what is interesting to know is that these are Romance languages. These things that some random linguist invented for their master's thesis in, 1874 may not be relevant.
Right.
So, I mean, if there's a way of pruning this so that we could give the basics, because to me, these are Indo-European languages. They are maybe Italic is maybe a real thing, then Romance, that's a real thing. And then after that, it's very real, I think. I mean, macro French, global French, I just don't think that's very real.
Right.
And I think that the better way to do it would be to give what people actually need to know, Indo-European, Romance language, boom, boom, boom. Okay. And if you want details, then you press the details button and you get the whole elaborated tree. Does that make
You may
sense?
be right that, yeah, and you may be right that the cases where there's only one out or a step, but there's a lot of uninteresting
Yeah, it's just
paths
irrelevant. I
through the
mean,
tree. Yeah.
but I mean, I also think that you can elide pieces. I mean,
Mhm.
some of these categories are famous, like Romance languages, for example. Some of these categories are irrelevant, right? It's a hair splitting.
Mhm.
It's not even clear it's useful to classify. By the time there's, three languages altogether, and there's two categories for three languages, it's not that useful a classification, right? It's a different thing. It's
Right.
asking for effectively to characterize distances between languages by their hierarchy, and that's probably not the right way to do it. So I strongly favor trying to prune this dramatically.
Okay.
The things to language categories that we probably, at least for the Western European languages, that we probably heard of. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like test who has heard of which of these categories has one heard of? Anybody here? Anybody, including people with linguistics backgrounds. You're allowed to weigh in. Which of these have you actually heard of? Okay, we're going to put Carolyn on the spot, for example.
I mean, I would say, sorry, I'm trying to zoom in so I can see everything
Well,
it says. I know if we're talking about like macro French and global French, I've heard of those just in the context of like African French versus,
okay,
Canadian
all right,
French versus
good.
continental French. And then the divide between like the when it's talking about West Ibero Romance versus like basically that's the divide between like Spanish languages and French languages.
Okay, fine.
And French
You've heard of
has a
that
lot
one.
of
Okay.
all these romances have a ton of little minority mini languages. Um,
Okay, I
it,
just need
And
to,
it's
she has
like you
also
said,
named, she has
essentially
also zeroed in on a couple of nodes that do have multiple branches below them.
yes,
yeah,
isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
essentially it really comes down to these are all real things. It just depends how how
Well,
granularly we
I
want to
understand. I'm
classify
sure
them.
they're
And if we
real,
don't
but
want to classify them this granularly, then that's
right, but what we want is to understand. This is the whole point. There's no reason to give people information overload when, you know, what's I think, from my very, you know, cursory knowledge of this kind of thing, there are language categories that I've heard of where I immediately want to know, is Basque a Romance language? No, it's not. It's an isolate of some kind, right? That will be a useful thing to branch. I have no idea whether Basque is Indo-European. I think it maybe isn't, right? But
so.
that kind of thing is useful to know that it's some Latino Faliscan, which I mean, I could go look on the web and find out how many hits there are to that name. I bet it's very few.
I
So
I
that,
I
yeah,
think
yeah, go
are
ahead.
we doing this for people who are interested in linguistics, who are like linguistic scholars who want to do granular looks at like how
No, no,
far
wait,
apart are these
no, no.
individual languages? Or
Okay,
are we gearing this more towards people who do not have a deep background in linguistics but want to include linguistics calculations in the work they're doing?
okay. In Wolfram language, we will have, and if you press the details button, you'll get the whole 9 yards or 50 languages or whatever it is, language families. The issue is for the person who wants to, who's doing a linguistics class or who is trying to figure out something like, if I go to Basque country, will I even have a hope of reading the road signs, more or less? Um, you know, that's where, um, that's the kind of we're looking for. It's just like we could go in any field we try to capture the things which are actually useful to typical people, and then we might have some detail level that captures the things that are for scholars,
Mhm.
where scholars will often disagree, for example.
Mhm.
I could go pull down, I've got many, many linguistics books. I can pull down some of them and look at what they actually do, but I've never seen some of these classifications, which I find suspicious because it's not like I haven't looked at, linguistics books and so on. So that's why I think they're kind of things where if you want to make up a large number of granular levels, you can come up with these things, but it's kind of not um uh not so relevant. Anyway, I think we
So
have a clear path here.
yeah, it
Yeah.
sounds like we want to focus more on people who don't want the granular classifications. We can include it, hidden for people who want it, but
Yeah, that's what we want. We want
yeah.
details. You absolutely get it. You don't ask for details, you get something which is much coarser.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also wonder for these lists, okay? I don't know how, like, for example, here, it's interesting that Logoduri Sardinian has that similarity. But I think, again, we might want to go common languages and then we might want to say all languages here. Because I think in
Yeah.
many cases it's going to get too weird. It's like clearly
The common and
Italian.
familiar ones are hidden in the list if you're.
Yeah, here it's useful to know Italian, Romansh, maybe Spanish, Romanian, Portuguese, and so on. I've never heard of Sango, German, English, right? Because I think there'll be other cases, and I'm sure if I was able to run this, I could actually look at it. There'll be other cases where there's a giant list of extremely similar, small dialecty-like languages that you just don't need to see. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
And we can calculate this easily by looking at their, um, number of speakers and things like this.
Right.
Okay. So in this classification sequence, again, we can have the details button. This would just say Indo-European, probably italic, Romance,
And
maybe macro French. I'm not sure. You just look it up.
with ellipsis out chunks of it.
Possibly that
Just
wouldn't
in
be
terms of
bad.
design.
Yeah, I think that might be good. Rather than to ellipsis it.
And then the show details would fill in the.
Yep, that's a good idea.
Elided parts.
Okay. Yep, that's a good idea. Okay. So I would think these should be. I don't see why you have to repeat the name here. These are just pieces of a tree, and the tree happens to be disconnected. You can already see the name because right here. And when you don't color these things, it's very obvious which language is being referred to in that part of the tree. Make sense?
Yes. So just untitled subpods, basically.
I would think so. I think they have to be subpods. I think it can be all part of one pod. It's just that those trees happen to be disjoint.
Okay.
And these trees, by the way, are going to look a lot better when they don't have as many.
Right.
When you elide this, it's going to look really nice, actually. And it's going to be much more useful. I don't know what it looks like between French and Hindi or something, but it's going to branch higher on the tree and it's going to look reasonable. It requires a little bit of thought to understand how if Latino Faliscan branches, all you're doing is you're taking every leaf that can you still hear me?
Yeah, you cut out for a minute, but
okay, every leaf. Yeah, okay. There's a tree transformation that you're going to need to do to elide pieces that we're not going to explicitly have. Right, but I don't think it's very hard.
Okay.
Okay. Don't we have any notation here? Well, okay. Some of these things, what I worry about is that with some of these languages, like I don't know. There are languages, there are some pretty obscurely named languages
Yeah.
that have pretty short names. And you're going to land on that thing when you really wanted to type, I don't know, you type, well, why am I thinking of the language Igbo? But you know, I'm thinking, and you really wanted to type something with a imaginary I and something or other, and you land on Igbo, and it's like, what on earth is this? I do think that the less well-known languages, they could do with a language paren.
Yeah. I mean, this is a family, I think, but yes.
No, I understand. This is a
Right.
Japanese
Yeah, I just
language
in general, these domains probably at this point, since we have so many things that are, we've got so much stuff that's out in the tail, it's worth explicitly labeling them in the II.
Yeah. The ones where it's you know, I don't know whether you need to label Spanish. Well, paren language is okay because otherwise it might be a nationality or something like this.
It's not harmful. So I think it's not,
Yeah,
doesn't look stupid to explicitly tag it.
fine. What the heck is this? Descendants, children? It's like that's what the children speak as opposed to the. I'm
Well,
sorry,
you
I'm
wanted us
punching the air.
to go with the tree terminology, and we use children and parents when we're talking about trees of things. If you think it
Okay,
should
but
be
this
different
already
in this
says
context,
descendants. So I don't understand what's a children versus a language. Oh, I see. Those are language family descendants. So then it should say language families and
no,
language.
it could be those are the children, the like one generation down,
I see.
which could be
One.
languages or language families. Languages is all the leaves under that node.
So why isn't old Japanese is there? That's super confusing. Okay.
Yeah,
I think it should be called direct descendants and then all languages.
okay, sure. I mean, we are also working on definitions for that because it could be, it is confusing if you have not been working on this kind of thing.
Well, but why don't we call it direct descendants and
Which
all
is
languages?
just the one step down from
Yep.
the entity in
Yes,
question.
Now,
makes
that's
sense.
going to get tricky when we've done the tree elision that we just talked about.
Mm,
Isn't it? Because the direct descendants would be, they could be the direct descendants of, for example, up above, like romance, for example, could be, in other words, if the tree's been elided, the direct descendant might have been elided away.
But
You see what I'm
if
saying?
this is specifically the language family scanner, so you have directly asked for a language family here.
I understand, but if you ask for a language
would you
family,
really why would we be eliding the next level down of a language
okay,
family?
so my point is this. Let's say you say romance. No, let's say you say Indo-European. Well, that's a bad example. Let's say you say romance, okay? Now, I don't know, as Carolyn was indicating, perhaps the Gallo-Ratian, I don't know that word, and the Ibero romance, that's sort of Gallic and Iberic somehow, Iberian somehow, that is kind of the obvious next level down. See what I'm saying? You can always add more. You can always, there probably, I don't know how many nodes there are at this level. There might be 5, let's say, at this level from romance, right? But I can always add a new level. I can say, wait a minute, that type of beetle, I mean, in the taxonomic example, I thought there were, 8 families of beetles from in this sort of superfamily of beetles. But actually, I'm going to make a distinction because some of those beetles have, purple on their third antenna and some don't. And I'm going to call that another category of, purple beetles as opposed to black beetles or something. Within that out of those 8, I'm going to break that into a different hierarchy level. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And you don't want to do that. And there's no more reason to do that than there is to, that's the same issue as showing all of the levels versus showing just some. And I think the same thing should be done with these. Possibly, if we can come up with a term that means kind of fine-grained descendants and something like basic descendants and detailed descendants, or basic direct descendants and fine-grained direct descendants, right? Basic direct descendants is now, so if you've landed on a node that is already obscure, like shifted Western Romance, then, if that's already obscure, then, well, no, you still could have both the fine-grained and the basic direct descendants, because you're then going to the next basic direct descendant after you tree down all the fine-grained ones. This is a good idea. This is going to make this much more useful.
Okay.
Does this make sense? I mean, so you'll end up with three, unless there's a pod that doesn't need to be there, which we should have lied away, where it'll say basic direct descendants, fine-grained direct descendants, and all languages. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, that makes sense.
Okay, so here I don't know. Yeah, so we'll probably have to change these a bit to reflect that as well. Okay. Okay, ancestry, what is this?
Sorry, these are the properties that right now are accessible in the language that to handle different views of the neighborhood around the given language family in the tree.
Okay, so this is ancestors tree and descendants tree, presumably.
Yeah, descendants tree is a little bit down in the notebook. Yes.
Okay, but then I think we should say direct parent family versus then probably basic parent family. Basic ancestor tree versus ancestors tree. Go ahead.
Question, but the terminology of parent doesn't imply already that it's direct?
I don't think so. Because remember, if the thing that is the direct parent is elided, you go to the first non-elided parent.
Okay.
See what I'm saying?
Okay. Yeah, sure.
So if I go up here and I'm at Castilic, well, this is a bad example. If I'm at Romance here, it could be that my first direct parent is Indo-European or something, or classical Indo-European. See what I'm saying? Even though I have basic direct parent is that, even though my first fine-grained direct parent is that. Am I making sense?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So language families that are historical, like, I don't know, Akkadian or something, are still in, I mean, they still have language codes, don't they? I mean, they're still in the inventory of languages that one uses. It's just that they happen to have 0 speakers in the present age. Just think about this, guys. I wonder if we can get data on this historical language numbers, historical speaker numbers. I wonder if anybody has looked at that.
And there have to be some numbers available for some languages, certainly.
One would think so.
Yeah.
I mean, some of them, well, it will map a bit into conquests and things. It'll be partly population, partly conquests. Yeah. Okay. I'm wondering if these boxes should be sibling languages and things. It's a bit obscure seeing siblings here.
I guess the reason is because siblings includes language families and languages. We could use language, I suppose, but I don't know how well known of a term
I
that
see.
is.
No. Okay, fine. I mean, we could call it tree siblings. That at least would be look quite as obscure. And then we could call it tree neighborhood. Maybe. I mean, you guys have got to work through this elided trees thing first, and then I mean, that's the full descendant tree that you're showing there, here, right? The full
Yes, correct.
tree can go up. So I think you need to distinguish those two cases. Because you might want the tree that is from the root, which is basically the tree that you have up here, is a tree from the root that gets
in this
to
case,
that.
it's coming from the root because you're asking for Japanese that is at the second level, but it comes from the root, which is Japonic.
Oh, I see. Okay, fine. Okay, so that really is the full tree from the root. Okay, so then I agree that a full tree is a reasonable name for that. Okay. All right, should we move on?
Sure.
Okay.
This was we had a subset of properties from the what is it, World Atlas of Language Structures, and there were some formatting things. I think previously we had been trying to shorten the property names, which just led to them being even more confusing. So we were saying we should just use for the most part, the standard names as they're presented in walls. Previously, where we had things like subject, verb, objects, they were getting formatted as subject plus verb plus object, which was sort of implying something different, we all felt, than just having them hyphenated. And this view is a more standard way of presenting these things when you're talking about these types of borders.
Huh. I didn't know Spanish had adjectives after the noun. Showing pathetic knowledge of those are interesting. Okay. Okay. Are you going to have explanation? Yes, you do have definitions. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
In terms of exposure in the language, is a similar question here as with the phonetic structure above, right? Some of these things are in just numbers, they're counts of things, but other ones are these finite sets of different categories. Sort of how much we break those down, right?
Well, like
having
based
entities,
on meaning and convention is kind of
right.
I mean, I would say missing based on meaning and convention or something, because it really is missing. It's not, there isn't an assignment there. No case marking, missing. No case marking. So I'm saying here. Number of grammatical cases, 0. That's fine.
Right. Well, but then how about, noun, adjective, subject, negation, verb, object?
There aren't that many of them, are there?
No.
Maybe they should be entities.
But I mean, that's exactly the question that I'm asking below. Sort
Okay,
of
so I'm suggesting
how do we type those? Or I mean, what type would those entities be if we're going to create them?
linguistic structure. What type are things like verb and noun?
Grammatical unit.
Okay. Also, maybe this is grammatical structure for that.
Yeah, could be.
And this would be morphological property or something, phonological property, or it could
Okay.
just be linguistic property.
Cluster, keeping them the types by the broad category, and then
That's what I would think. And when this gets
Okay,
very
I think that
narrative,
makes
like
sense.
based on meaning and convention, I would just say missing.
Fair enough. Yeah.
I mean, I think, it'd be fun to make a histogram or something, or a pie chart of how many languages in the world have how many genders.
Oh yeah, the numerical things there are interesting and fun things we can do with those.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so tone system could be true or false. I mean, I don't know whether this nominal case marking.
I think the sections below, if you pop them open, I think those have some tables that have all the possible values for each of the properties. I just expand all under those.
Right. And I do think it's useful to say subject, object, verb, paren, SOV.
Yeah. Okay.
Paren, but word order. Wait a minute. There's 6 cases, right? There are 3 objects. So I see. So all of them are, I know OSV is pretty rare. Okay. Oh, I see. There it is. Look at that. Oh, wow. Look at that. One of those is probably Klingon. So, for example, by the way, do we know for historical languages what years they were in use?
I don't think Christian, we don't have that in the property now, do we?
No, we don't have that property.
We could try to
Let's try and
scrape
get
and
it.
curate
Let's
that
try
in
and
some
get
cases. Yeah.
Seems useful. I mean, it'd
Ye-
be really cool to see whether over the course of linguistic history, SOV or SBO, gradually won out over BOS or something.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, this property name should presumably be word order or something. Or
Yes.
I don't know what transitive word order. I don't know word order. Well,
Yeah, we were the names themselves.
no, the word order. They wrote it right there. Negation, subject, object, verb. What does that mean? Negation, subject, object. Why isn't it just negation word order? Why isn't it just the same?
I think it could be. None of these property names are what they should finally be.
Okay, I would suggest negation word order.
We also said last time these should be updated. So
okay, it's really quite interesting the way these are. I don't know what morphological negation means. That means you stuff something onto the word to mean it's negative.
I believe it's in the pod result. It's a little better explained. Verbal negation by affixes or tone.
I would call this adjective word order. Yeah, okay. Numeral word order. All right. Should I really be going through all of these, or are you going to?
Oh, I don't think you need to go through this. I just was mentioning this because you were asking some question about how many different variants are there for things.
Okay.
For some of them, yes, the missing something makes sense. For other ones, it's, it's a simple set. There are clear things that could be entities. So
Vowel count, consonant count. These ones should surely be. What the heck is this? Why don't we just say how many vowels it has? Because even in English, we don't even know.
yeah,
But that's kind of weird. Like in English, A, I, O, U, whatever. Okay, they're fairly uncontroversial. Y is more controversial, blah, blah, blah. I don't know how we classify that for any language.
this is why it's always been complicated when you say, why don't we have lists of vowels and consonants for
I know, but I mean,
languages X and Y?
there's a notion of sort of basic vowels, I would think. I really think it would be nice to have numbers here, even if it's a range. I mean, for English, what would you say for English? Okay, let me just inventory for people here. Spanish, do you know what vowels? People who speak Spanish, do you know what the vowels are? I mean, is there a definite set?
Yeah, sure. 5 vowels.
How many?
5.
As opposed to 6 in English, right? A, E, I, O, U. No, that's 5.
Depends on whether you're talking about the letters themselves or the sounds they make, because those are two different categories in English, whereas in Spanish they're the same.
Well, I mean, if it's the sounds, we've got to do phonemes, and then it's an IPA story, which is its own interesting thing, which we don't have in the languages right now, is what phonemes are in these languages, right? Which would be nice to have, and then we could break those phonemes. Once you're at the level of phonemes, don't you know from the phonemes whether they're vowel or consonant phonemes? Isn't that correct?
Generally, yes, with one or two rare exceptions like Y and W.
No, I understand, but those are letters. By the time they're phonemes, you know if it's a voice Y or it isn't, and so on, right?
There are sounds called approximants, which can be used as either vowels or consonants. But like I said, rare and not necessarily what we want to base our system on.
Okay. All right. But I think, it's super useful to just have vowels and consonants, the basic thing. Like you're trying to make up words. Kind of want, yeah, you might have a Y in there from time to time. But I think this is this is life in the world of computable data, is you got to make a decision, how many moons does Jupiter have? Well, there might be a little piece of rock, well, it's not a moon type thing. You see what I'm saying? And right. I mean, again, the phonemes for each language do seem highly useful. And once you know that, it's tantamount to knowing vowels versus consonants and so on. All right. I mean, there's a bit of stuff here that's very narrative, like average vowel. I mean, I really think it'd be nice, since so many are missing. The ones that are here, I'm sure we can just nail the numbers and just get the lists of vowels and consonants with some approximation.
Yeah, well, look, we can use this
I
as a
mean, we
guide.
could use basic vowels and possible vowels might be a way to handle it.
Yeah.
Basic vowels in English, I, A, I, O, U, possible vowels, including Y. Okay, anything else for this meeting?
Not today.
Okay, nice stuff.
All right. Yeah,
This is
thank you.
great. We've been waiting a long time for all of this. It's really
All right.
great. All right, see you guys soon.